Live picture of the United States Capitol in Washington this morning. A very busy day there. Joining us now, the #2 ranked Democrat in the House, Congressman Steny Hoyer of Maryland. Congressman, thanks for being with us this morning. I know you are not rooting for this bill to pass tonight, but you've been around for a couple of minutes in Washington. You've seen how these things play out. Do you think it gets through the House?
My gut tells me no, but my experience tells me at the end of the game, there's a lot of pressure brought on people who think the bill is bad to vote for it, notwithstanding their judgment that it's not a good bill. So I think it's still up in the air, and clearly they don't have the votes now because the president's working it very hard, the Republican leadership's working very hard, and they're making changes that we're not sure what the changes are. We haven't seen the changes, and to bring a bill to the floor of this magnitude that's going to at risk millions of people from losing their insurance, millions more paying much more for their coverage, and then placing really substantially additional costs on seniors, shouldn't be brought to the floor with this kind of doubt and with the lack of information as to what's in the bill. Your point
about members, Congressman, feeling that pressure and voting against their own interests or the interest of their constituents. It's such an interesting insight for people watching at home. Why would a congressman or congresswoman do that at the finish line? Is the pressure from Paul Ryan? Is the pressure from the White House? How does that happen?
I think it's cumulative. I think it's all of the above. Clearly, Trump will see this, if he loses this bill, as a loss. I don't frankly think he knows what's in it. It clearly does not achieve what the president promised to the American people. He said everybody was going to have insurance. He didn't say access to insurance. Everybody was going to have insurance. Better quality at lower cost. This bill does not accomplish that. Other Republicans said they wanted to repeal the bill. This bill, the Affordable Care Act, this bill does not accomplish that. Paul Ryan has said everybody will have access, and then he added a cogent point that they can afford. That's, of course, the problem. We're pricing people out of the insurance market by this bill. And that's why CBO says 14 million people are going to lose insurance just this coming year, 24 million by 2026, and there'll be 52 million people without insurance in America. That will cost everybody else who has insurance higher premiums and substantially more costs and deductibles and premiums. So this is a bad bill. It doesn't accomplish the objective that the American people want, or that President Trump said he wanted to accomplish, and therefore they're having great difficulty convincing members either who think it hurts too many people or, frankly, who think it doesn't hurt enough people.
Congressman Hoyer, we just had Congressman Massey from Kentucky on with us, and he knew that he was not on Comedy Central. He knew that he was on MSNBC. But he said he was indicating hell no on the bill. He was going to vote he was going to vote against the bill, but basically went on to say that he was pretty much in favor of maintaining the ACA, Obamacare, until they came up with a suitable alternative. So my question to you is, you've been there a long time in the Capitol. The Republicans have had 7 years of complaining, saying we're going to repeal Obamacare and we have an alternative. What do you figure they were really doing across the last 7 years?
They were pandering to their hard right, in my opinion. They were pandering to people who weren't really cognizant of what the bill's specifics were, and they voted for repealing the Affordable Care Act. Now we see them saying, oh, well, we didn't really mean that in terms of staying on until you're 26. We really didn't mean that when we talked about pre-existing conditions. We really didn't mean that when we talked about eliminating annual or lifetime limits that drive people into bankruptcy. So they voted a lot of times to repeal all of those items. But when it came down to really doing it and having a plan, frankly, they had none, and they still have no plan that has a consensus in their party. And very frankly, I saw Mr. Massey as he was leaving, speaking to you earlier. He was on right before me. And he said, "You're still with me, aren't you?" Meaning that for different reasons, we've reached the same conclusion. This bill is a bad bill for the American people.
Congressman, it's Steve Kornacki. You mentioned the people who would stand potentially to lose coverage or to see their costs rise under this Republican plan. And some people have made the point that disproportionately it may be a lot of Donald Trump voters who would be affected in that way by this, older people maybe who would see their costs go up. I guess the question I'm asking is, there's this sense out there that Republicans, the Trump administration, stand to lose sort of their political standing with these voters by doing that. I'm curious, though, why those same people never embraced Obamacare over the last 7 years. If they stand to lose something they like in this story we're hearing right now, why did they never reward Democrats for it in the first place?
Well, they didn't like Obamacare, but they're not so sure they want to lose the Affordable Care Act. Now, that's a joke, sort of, because we know that they're the same thing. But very frankly, when a woman in Kentucky was interviewed in a county that I think went 67, 69% for Donald Trump, she voted for Donald Trump, and she said, surely he's not going to take away my health care, which he has in the exchange. So I think there was not a real awareness. And it's interesting, as people have looked more closely at what this means, for the first time since it was adopted now, the Affordable Care Act is above water. That means more people are for keeping it than for taking it away. That was not the case for a number of years because the demagoguery, in my opinion, that was said about Obamacare made people think, well, this is somehow some socialized a system of medicine and it's not going to help me. In fact, millions and millions of people have found that it does in fact help them, their families, their children with pre-existing conditions, and their mom and dad who are seniors. So the fact of the matter is, I think we've seen a shift now. And you're right. The irony is the people who are going to lose most are a lot of the Trump voters in the middle of the country. Very frankly, this is a tax cut for the wealthiest in America, and as a result, they live on the coast, a lot of them. And a lot of them voted for Hillary Clinton. And the fact is, they're going to be advantaged. They're going to get a big, big tax cut to the detriment of seniors and almost everyone else. And I think it's an irony that you're right. A lot of the Trump voters are taking a look at this and say, hey, this is not what I meant. I didn't want my health care taken away. I didn't want my children put at risk. I didn't want my mom and dad, who are seniors, disadvantaged. And yeah.
And a good bit of that has to do with the proposed rollback of Medicaid there as well. Congressman Steny Hoyer.
Apparently they're in the process of making it worse.
All right, Congressman Steny Hoyer of Maryland, thank you so much, sir. Always good to talk to you. Our next guest believes House Republicans made this repeal process a lot harder